Hi, praise be to God. The other video with the title Pain and Suffering is the first part of this message. This video is part 2 and the final part of the message about pain and suffering. In this message, I'm going to be in Daniel chapter 8, Matthew chapter 24, and Revelation chapter 20, verse 7 to 9. In the previous video, I read from Daniel chapter 8, verse 1 to 5. I'm going to go back to Daniel chapter 8, verse 5 to 8 and talk more about it. The goat with a prominent horn between its eyes, as we know now, is Greece, and the prominent horn between its eyes being the king of Greece, also known as the first king according to the interpretation in Daniel chapter 8, verse 21. According to Greece's history, this king's name is known as Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great is the one who overpowered Media and Persia and also helped Greece grow so much in power. But at the height of Greece's power, Alexander the Great died. So his 4 generals divided the kingdom among themselves. So the kingdom was divided into 4 kingdoms. And this is where I stopped in the previous video. I stopped in Daniel chapter 8, verse 8. Today I'm going to read the rest of the vision. So I'm going to start from verse 9 to verse 12. So Daniel chapter 8 verse 9 to 12 says that, "Out of them came another horn which started small but grew in power to the south and to the east and toward the beautiful land. It grew until it reached the host of the heavens, and it threw some of the stray hosts down to the earth and trampled on them. It set itself up to be as great as the commander of the army of the Lord. It took away the daily sacrifice from the Lord, and his sanctuary was thrown down. Because of rebellion, the Lord's people and the daily sacrifice were given over to it. It prospered in everything it did, and truth was thrown to the ground." The interpretation of these verses say, in the latter part of their reign, when rebels have become completely wicked, a fierce-looking king, a master of intrigue, will arise. He will become very strong, but not by his own power. He will cause astounding devastation and will succeed in whatever he does. He will destroy those who are mighty, the holy people. He will cause the seed to prosper, and he will consider himself superior. When they feel secure, he will destroy many and take his stand against the prince of the princes. Yet he will be destroyed, but not by human power. So the fierce-looking king, a master of intrigue that arose, was probably Antiochus Epiphanes IV. His power grew over towards the south, towards the east, and towards the land of Israel. The land of Israel is referred to as a beautiful land in the vision. Antiochus persecuted the people of Israel. He put a stop to the temple sacrifices in Jerusalem and desecrated the Lord's temple. Notice that the people of Israel are referred to as the host of heaven in the vision. All this happened because the people of Israel sinned greatly against God. So God judged them and gave them over to Antiochus. Going back to the book of Daniel chapter 8 verse 12, the word of the Lord says that, "Because of rebellion, the Lord's people and the daily sacrifice were given over to it." Antiochus prospered in everything he did, though he was wicked, and so did deceit prosper. So the truth was thrown to the ground. The things that Daniel saw in this vision, as we can see, have already happened. However, Daniel's vision was not just about then, it is also about now. His vision relates to the things that are happening now, and this is because we are still living in the end times. The vision Daniel saw concerned the end times, and since we are still living in the end times, these things are still happening and will keep happening until the very end. God's times are different from ours. 1,000 years to us might only be 1 minute to God. As for now, the times that we are living in now, the level of sin among God's people is great, because so many false prophets have risen and are deceiving many. Jesus says in the book of Matthew chapter 24 verse 11 that, "And many false prophets will appear and deceive many people." And this is what is happening right now. As a result, the amount of wickedness has increased. So God will raise up someone like Antiochus, a master of intrigue, and under his rule, so many people will suffer. God's people too will suffer. He will be strong and will prosper in everything he does. The same things will happen at the very end of the end times. The book of Revelation chapter 20 verse 7 to 9, the word of the Lord says that, "When the 1,000 years are over, Satan will be released from his prison and will go out to deceive the nations in the 4 corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, and to gather them for battle. In number they are like the sand on the seashore, They marched across the breadth of the earth and surrounded the camp of God's people, the city he loves. But fire came down from heaven and devoured them. Going back to the book of Daniel chapter 8, in verse 24 the word of the Lord says that he will become very strong, but not by his own power. And also in verse 25 the word of the Lord says that yet he will be destroyed, but not by human power. Notice that God is the one in control. And also in the book of Revelation chapter 20 verse 7 the word of the Lord says that when the 1,000 years are over, Satan will be released from his prison. In verse 9 the word of the Lord says that but fire came down from heaven and devoured them. So notice that God is the one who will release Satan, and God will be the one to destroy him with fire. And this is what is going to happen. God will be the one who will raise up a ruler, a master of intrigue, and God will be the one who will destroy him.